Welcome back to the channel for another tool review kind of thing, kind of, sorta. If this is your first visit to the channel, I do tool reviews every now and again, and I got a playlist of them going, which I'll throw right up there for you, and down in the description. Today we're here to talk about one of the very few Ryobi tools I bought that I just don't like, never have liked. I'm doing that for two reasons. First reason is because I don't think I've given anything but a thumbs up to any Ryobi stuff. So although I am a fanboy, I'm trying not to be a perennial fanboy. If there's something I don't like, I will tell you that. And also because I think I've got a plan to fix it. And what it is this P700 18-volt flashlight. This is part of my original Ryobi toolkit from, I think, like 2005. Way back in the day when they were still doing these. They came with NiCad batteries. And I'll be honest, it actually took me about 2 years to make this video because I spent that much time just trying to look for the thing. You can see how dirty it is. It's just been laying around. But the big problem I have with it is, one, it is just not very bright. And two, especially with one of those giant NiCad batteries in it, it is really tall and it's also kind of heavy. Under a car, this thing was miserable because it was just way too high to put it anywhere that was useful. And this head, I think, kind of articulates. And I think it's got like some focusability, but it never seemed to want to articulate where I wanted it, especially with one of those giant NiCad batteries in it. So this thing always kind of sucked, but I have a cunning plan. Actually, it's kind of a dumb plan, but I'm still going to try it. Went on the Amazons and found an LED light bulb that is supposed to fit this thing. As I recall, this thing was more than half the price of just buying an entire LED light to replace this guy. The new Ryobi one actually looks like it's much more friendly to what I would like to do with it. But all the same, figured this would be a fun thing to try, so we will. And also, a lot of the cure with a lot of these older Ryobi tools that maybe weren't that great when they were new, 15, 20 years ago, whatever, is the modern lithium-ion batteries. So here I've got, I don't know, like a 2 amp hour battery, and it's about half the height of the old NiCad ones. Plus, these put out a lot more power, a lot more quickly than an NiCad would. So that's going to take care of some of my problem for me. Frankly, I don't even know if this thing still works at all. Yeah, it's making some really dull light. Just for fun, let's go around the shop with this thing with all the other lights out, and I'll just kind of point that at stuff. So welcome to my found footage horror movie. Got Saddington there chilling out. And I'm just going to stand right where I am because I know where I am. That is the garage door. That is from probably 10 feet. Up in the ceiling, off in the corner, drill press, garbage on the bench, garbage under the bench, whatever. So that is pretty much the idea. Go over to the car. And in reality, it's about twice as good as it looks on camera, but it's still bad. So let's try that other bulb and see what we get out of it. So first things first, I'm not even sure how to get the bulb out of it. Because this, oh, never mind. Looks like it's gonna be a real challenge. It unscrews. Interestingly, that is already warm. I only ran the bulb for moments. It's also neat that that's actually on a spring. So it's less resistant to breaking. That's actually neat. Yeah, big challenge. Okay. See if our replacement bulb fits, and I'll link this down in the description. It was supposed to fit a whole bunch of flashlights like Milwaukee's and everything else. It appears it is the same base. I question whether that one chip on there is going to do me any good. We'll see. Stuff her in there. It's in there. That was way less exciting than I thought it'd be. See if it works. It works. I'm not overwhelmed yet. Let's turn all the lights off and see what happens. Welcome back to my found footage movie part 2. It's kind of hard to say whether or not this is better. I am probably going to have to do what you're doing and evaluate the recording and see. In reality, I want to say it's maybe a third better. I think you're going to see that on camera too. The color temperature is clearly a little whiter, a little more blue. Over there, the corner of the car, up to the roof, over in the corner, drill press, garage door again. Hard to say. So is the performance difference of the bulb that's in it versus, the old one worth what I paid for it? Honestly, don't know. I do like the little metal box the new one came in. I think what will be fun to do is, one, use it for a while, and two, I think maybe I'll watch eBay and maybe wait for Black Friday sale or something like that and buy the new version of this light, the current one, that is an LED, and maybe give them a little bit of a shootout in a while. So I'm gonna use this thing until then, develop more of an opinion of it, and move on. And now both those things have happened. In reality time, it's only been a couple of weeks, but I decided to pick this Ryobi light up off of Amazon because they're really so cheap, there wasn't any point in waiting. I try to keep the clickbait to a minimum on the channel, so if we're gonna do a topic, let's try and do it the whole way through. And I've also used this guy significantly more. And for automotive stuff, I still don't really like it. But for other things, it's not as bad as I remembered. And it really doesn't have much to do with how bright it is. I don't think I made it any brighter switching bulbs, so we'll just call that part for fun. But the grip on it isn't so bad when you're shining down at things. So I've got a couple of nightmares over here I've been working on that have been giving me trouble, and those videos will be on the channel and other places if you want to look for them. And this thing has been kind of nice to work on these guys because I'm almost always looking down on them. So if I come over to this air compressor here and kick my light on, and I want to shine it around at things, it's actually not too bad because it's a pretty natural grip to do that. And the same is true with the tractor. If doing engine work or looking down on the hydraulic pump and stuff like that, since I'm coming in from the top, this isn't so bad. This is awful under a car for exactly that reason. Even though they make this so it kind of can rotate up, it's still not good under a car. I just never did like it. Hence the video. Never did like this thing. But I'm finding renewed use for it now that I've got it back in my hands, and frankly, now that I found it, it's been missing for like probably 5 years. Now the question becomes, is the new boy any brighter than my bulb upgrade? I would kind of hope so, because it didn't really seem like a big giant upgrade. And when you get stuff on Amazon, this is how it comes, by the way. There's no box or anything, which is fine with me. I'd much rather just deal with this amount of trash. All right, let's go right to the same battery. This happens to be a 3 amp hour. I doubt it matters. Right away, this thing kind of sucks to hang on to with big hands, and with this giant battery in it, it's balanced very poorly. I didn't mind that as much with this guy. In fact, I'm gonna get a smaller battery just to get the whole thought process out there. Because that was one of the things I didn't like about that one, is it was too heavy and too big. So I got that guy on it, that's probably like a 1.5 amp hour. Anyway, kicking her on, she makes light. Let's kick the lights off in the shop and see what I think about it, and then we can do a side by side on both of them. At a glance, I don't think this is really any better of a performer. And just so it's fair, I put batteries of similar size in each of them, although it shouldn't matter. So there's Mr. Old School with his LED bulb. Just gonna shine him at the corner for right now. I'll kick on Mr. New School with his LED bulb. I don't think there's a whole lot of difference. Maybe just a little more light out of this guy. Let me kick off Mr. Old School here. See if I can actually get them so they're both dropped on top of each other. So I've got them right on top of each other right now. So that's both of them. That's Mr. New School only. Both of them again. And Mr. Old School. So Mr. New School does throw a pretty appreciable amount more light. We'll do the kind of the same thing we did before, just down at the corner of the car. And up at the ceiling, and kind of over in the corner, and back around, and just with my eyeballs, I would say can confirm the new one's brighter, but I don't think it's enough of a difference to really matter. So this thing's at no risk of becoming one of my favorite tools. I wouldn't go as far as to say now that I hate it. Now I've just used it in a different way than I did all those years ago. Because years ago, all I ever did was work on vehicles. I never worked on stuff, or seldom needed to work on stuff. I was just always working on cars. This thing is also probably not gonna become a favorite. It's just, for me, it's kind of awkward to handle, which sucks because that's where this one excels. It's just pointing the wrong way. But I do think for under a car, this will end up being a lot more valuable to me. It's just going to be a lot easier to point it up and shine it on things without having to be a contortionist with this thing and be in a like a super unnatural position with it or whatever. So really, I think the right answer here is the answer I've got, which is both of them. I probably would not have spent the 10 or 15 bucks or whatever it was to buy a bulb for this thing. I just don't think there's a performance difference there. Maybe the battery lasts 1,000 times longer now, but I would never care about that. I'm not going to need this thing for hours on end. It would be more like for minutes on end. And in fact, I've used it that way a few times already, just to grab a this or that quick. So they're both going to be nice to have for that. If for some reason you were in the position of either or, this is definitely the brighter one, but I think they're so close it doesn't make a difference. So I filmed all that about 1.5 years ago, and boy was I wrong about a few things. First of all, this thing has become one of my favorite tools. I don't hardly get under a car anymore without this guy in my hand, to the point that it's been detrimental to a couple of videos, because it does not make very good video lighting, but it makes good lighting for me. And sometimes I don't think through both those situations when I'm under a car. And you can see I have thoroughly knocked the new off of it. Things just filthy as all can be. But one thing I didn't really comment about in the prior segments is that the lens on this guy moves too, just like it does on this one. But since this is such a smaller form factor, it's much more useful. So you can power that duder up and stick him off to the side and get it shining up at your work for you. And it's pretty low profile and actually works out pretty well for that. Another thing, although it's not really that elegant, is it will stand up. As long as you don't go crazy, it'll stay that way. So you have a good bit of flexibility with this guy, and like I said, you can see from the wear on it in the last 1.5 years that it has become a go-to. In the same token, this guy has moved off of the hated list to I'm glad I have it out and using it now. One thing I'll give them both credit for is since they are LED, the battery life is crazy. So I was actually wrong. I don't really use these for a few minutes at a time. I have become pretty accustomed to just using them like a drop light. You just turn them on, throw them under the car, and then at the end of the day, you get them back out. Battery life is just so good because these bulbs are so efficient. You don't really have to worry about it. So I'd say, I don't know, the 15 bucks or whatever that bulb costs today was probably worth it. And plus I've gotten the tool out and used it, and you can see I've also knocked a good deal of the new off of this one, but nothing like the new guy here. Everything I said about ergonomics of these things in the past, I'll pretty much stand behind. This guy, if I were just to want a flashlight for some activity, just to go outside at night or whatever, this is the guy I grab just because it's much nicer to use for that. Basically anything where you want to point light down, this is the guy I go with. Everything else, I go with this guy. But the one thing I'll definitely stand behind that I said 1.5 years ago is that I do like having both of them. It's been really nice to have them both around. With the modern battery technology, the weight of them is no longer so annoying. This guy is too big for a lot of the automotive work I do, but this guy's just right. But at the same token, if you're walking around at night, you know, holding your hand at a funky angle to point this guy down at stuff isn't always the most convenient thing to do. In an ideal world, they would make both of these and still sell them, but I guess you kind of pick either or you find a used one on the market and do whatever you're going to do with it. More or less like I did, you know, dig it out of the mothballs after 5 or 10 years or however long that thing sat around, bring it up to speed with new bulb, new battery. But if I had to pick just one, it would probably be this one. Speaking of this one, this video is about at its end. As always, appreciate you guys stopping in for it. We'll catch you on the next one.